koutou katoa, i ngei ui o ngā hau e whā, e whakarongo mai rā I tēnei wā, I tēnei ahi ki te reo irirangi o Arrow FM, nau mai, haere mai, whakarongo mai. Everybody out there, welcome to Tribal Nations radio show for another week, here broadcasting out of Arrow FM in Masterton, 92.7. Tribal Nations are on the air to talk about our up-and-coming Rats run in Labour Weekend on the 27th of October. And the purpose or the kaupapa of this event is to raise awareness against teenage suicide. We've heard the latest statistics over the last few months, and it's not a good number to for in anybody's books. So Tribal Nations, as we do, we are concerned about these things, and we're going to be raising awareness about teenage suicide in the Wairarapa on Labour Weekend. We'll be riding through Featherston. We'll be starting at Featherston, riding through Martinborough, Greytown, Carterton, and ending up at Masterton at the Farriers Car Park in Masterton at about 12:30. So whānau, friends and whānau, welcome today, and we've got some special guests in our studio today to talk about the kaupapa. So I'd like to welcome my co-host, Brother Matua, who is in the studio today. Kia ora, brother.
Kia ora, bro. How's it going?
Ki te pai, I hope.
Just showing you. Not that it matters, but I'm here with my my brother Kaitiaki. There we go.
Yeah.
Kia ora, everyone. I'd just like to shout out to everyone out there that's listening, and hopefully, you know, like you might learn something today for the next hour. So kia ora.
And whānau, we have another special guest, Brother Seni Iasona, Year 13 student from Makota College, who's going to talk to us about the youth and mental health issues with the youth here in the Wairarapa. Welcome, Brother Seni.
Cool. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to start having these conversations.
Kia ora, brother. And I'd like to also welcome Tony Ryan to the show today. Tony is well known in the Wairarapa for supporting the kaupapa as well through her own journey through this kaupapa. Welcome, Tony.
Kia ora. Kia ora whānau. Thanks for having me.
And Sister Linda, she's been on the last few weeks talking about King Street Artworks and everything that King Street Artworks is doing. So welcome to the show again, Linda.
Kia ora whānau. It's good to be here again.
Yes, so whānau, this is, thank you for coming and joining us on our program today. We're going to talk about the kaupapa of mental health, mental well-being and teenage suicide. So, Brother Seni, would you like to inform our listeners about what you're doing at Wairarapa College, brother?
Yeah, so kind of found over the past kind of 5 years I've been at Makota that our teenagers fear speaking out about how they're feeling and how they're truly feeling, and maybe not being honest about how they're feeling, or even asking the people around them how they're feeling. So I've kind of taken it upon myself to start encouraging not even just the young ones but the adults as well to start having these conversations around mental health. And actually today it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and the World Health Association or something made the theme this year about suicide prevention, so I think that works really well with today especially. But yeah, my kind of focus is just having these conversations to start breaking down these stigmas around mental health and suicide. So last year I did a 24-hour radio marathon on Makota's radio station East FM, and had people come in like Lynn Patterson, had a phone conversation with Chloe Sawbrook, the Green MP, and Mike King as well, about these conversations and how we can demonstrate those and have those with our young people. And we also raised some money. We raised about $1,500 to go to the New Zealand Mental Health Foundation, which was awesome, and that's happening also again this year. I'm not hosting it, but Alex is. He's a Year 12 student at Makota, which is awesome. And then again this year I've done a video documentary called Student Issues, and I'm hoping to turn it into a series, but the first episode was around student wellbeing and mental health, because I feel like the education system isn't kind of connecting well and working with our young people, and allowing our young people to, and even the teachers as well, to kind of look after themselves while also passing NCA. But I guess the reason why I wanted to start making these things and start engaging people is because we have this mental health week once a year, and the conversations are so encouraged throughout that week. And my kind of, I don't know, after that you kind of see the mainstream media die out, the conversations died after that. The conversations around school, your workplace, they start dying out as well after that week. So I guess when I'm putting stuff out like these videos, that's just to encourage these conversations to keep happening, not just once a week. Because like we saw from these suicide statistics, 1 week of conversation is clearly not enough, and we need to keep on having these. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to do and trying to keep on doing. So I'm hoping to start producing another video with some friends, and more of the young people, because the one I put out at the beginning of this year only had about 3 students, and it was just from Makota, but it'd be awesome to have not just Makota students but young people from all over the Wairarapa engaging in these conversations. Yeah.
That is the challenge, isn't it, brother? Keep up the good work there, bro. That is the challenge, to get the youth to talk about these things, to get them to open up.
Yeah.
And I think that coming from your group, your peer, from your age group, I think it encourages that group to start to open up, and I see it not as a weakness, it's a strength if you can get them to start talking about these things. And it's hard for people like us who ride big bikes and to actually connect solidly with the youth. We find there is a little bit of a disconnect. We're concerned about it as parents, but we wonder how effective our messages are getting to the younger people. And it's encouraging that there are people like yourself who are prepared to pick up this challenge and challenge their peer group, your peer group, to talk about that. So thank you, brother. That is excellent work. On behalf of our whānau, we thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, kia ora. Tony, your journey with this kaupapa, for those that are not familiar with your story, are you able to fill us in a little bit about what brought you to this kaupapa?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Well, I suppose I'll start with the fact that in June 2011, so my husband and I, we've been married for 100 and something years at least, and we have 6 children. In June 2011, our third oldest child, Sam, lost his battle with depression and anxiety and lost his life to suicide. So thus began our journey of what we refer to in our home as before Sam and after Sam. And it has been a long journey. I suppose for me, I felt as though I had been born to be a parent. I had wanted to be a mum for as long as I could remember. And when I raised my children, I guess you fall into this false sense of security that it'll never happen to me. Sam had struggled, to be fair. When Sam was born, there had been some complications, and some of the neurons in Sam's brain were damaged, so he was born with a thing called dyspraxia, which is at different ages, different stages, but it can involve learning disability, sort of fine and gross motor skills and emotional stuff as well. So Sam had struggled with anxiety right from when he was a little poppet. So by the time he was 6, for example, he had ground his teeth almost down to his gums. His teacher at the time, we had him at one school, and it was always about draw us a nice picture while we learn, and so I decided that wasn't okay, and we had approached another school, Solway Primary School in Masterton, and they said, look, absolutely, we will do, because I knew how important it was with Sam, with his difficulties, that he was going to need help and support, and they were incredible. They're absolutely amazing. So when Sam then, we put Sam in Chanel College, and the reason that we did that was because we didn't want to move him from primary to intermediate and then to college because of his anxiety issues and stuff. We wanted him to feel settled where he was, which is why we took him to Chanel. Unfortunately, what happened as Sam began to make friends and things, real friends for the first time in his life, he'd been very shy, introverted, just wanted to be home on the farm really with his brothers and sisters. But that took a toll, so we found that the energy that he needed to use for self-care, he was putting all of that into making friends, and had very little left for self-care. And that's when we noticed that the depression began to become more pronounced in Sam, and the anxiety began to get worse. So we had every agency in the Wairarapa, I believe, I had gone to. So in the last 18 months, so Sam died in June, he would have been 17 in October. So he was 16 and a half. In that last 18 months, his struggle had become really pronounced, and he began to display what we refer to as typical suicidal behaviour in a teenage boy. So I think we often make the mistake of thinking that what depression looks like is someone curled up in a ball on their bed crying. In fact, that's not the case, particularly with our boys. So Sam began to use drugs and alcohol as a way of self-medicating. He began to, we have an agricultural business, so he would sort of like take our scrap metal and sell it, and he just began to display behaviour that was completely 180 of the young man that had grown up. He was a very sensitive kid, really gentle. Adults, when they met Sam when he was younger, would always say, oh, there's something really special about that kid, because he just had such a gentle spirit. And that completely changed, although when him and I were alone, it was still the tears on the bed curled up in a ball, and he would constantly apologise to me as things began. I mean, I remember 6 days before Sam died was the last time he'd come home, and he was stoned. And he was crying on his bed, and I went into his room, and he just was saying, Mum, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that I keep doing this, but some days it's the only thing that keeps me alive, because I'm just so sad. So all of this stuff, they're actually, I think sometimes we don't give our teenagers enough credit. They know how they feel. I think we don't listen to them, and so there was a lot of focus on his behaviour and not why that behaviour was happening. So we'd engaged with many agencies, and unfortunately, due to things like the Privacy Act and etc. and so forth, there wasn't a lot of discussion. In fact, there was no discussion between the agencies. So I had begged everybody, I think, to help him. Unfortunately, on the 20th of June, Sam lost his battle, and we lost one of my 6 reasons for breathing, really, to be fair. it was horrific. I found Sam that the other children were at home. My husband and our eldest son were coming home from work at the time. Within a very short period of time, everybody was there. We just had services. I wish the services had been there the day before, would have been nice. So we just had everybody there, and thus began this somewhat horrific journey, I suppose, for us. And the interesting thing is, they talk about it at the funeral home, about the waves of grief that you experience. What they forgot to tell us was that everyone in your home has a wave and it's different. So it became very turbulent, I suppose. And they say that I got told by a suicide prevention person at the time that losing a child is unthinkable. Losing a child to suicide is unimaginable, and being the mother of that child, there just are no words. And at the time, of course, wallowing in this pain and grief, I just had this real, woe is me thing. What I realised very quickly was losing a child to suicide is in fact not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing is living with the consequences of losing a child to suicide, and thus became a journey. And we have almost lost other children in our immediate family to suicide since then, as well as myself. We are now a family that lives with anxiety, etc., and so forth. So it has been a long journey. It has now been 8 years. It was 8 years in June since we lost Sam. It was, in fact, would have been Sam's 25th birthday on the 7th, so just gone. And there is still not a day that goes by that I would not give anything to have my son back, and that's after 8 years.
Sorry for your loss. Feel for your loss. We can still feel the pain that you're expressing. You just mentioned the birthday, and I guess time does not heal that wound, does it?
No.
You just keep are reminded of the potential.
Absolutely.
That was there.
That is absolutely what it is.
So, young folks out there, please engage and seek help, because there's help out there. There's a free call or a text available on 1737 anytime to talk with a trained counsellor. So there's other counsellor resources out there as well. So 1737, if you can't talk with your friends or your whānau, there's people out there to talk to. Anyone got anything else to add to this?
Just very humbled that Tony was able to come and tell her story here, and from our perspective with the King Street whānau and our own personal whānau, we remember that time 8 years ago, and had a small part to play in Sam's tangi and some of the waves of grief that surrounded that passing. As you say, it's hard to find words. I'm in the lucky position of having children who've attempted suicide and are still here. So, and I can't imagine how that feels. When Seni was talking, and when you were talking as well, I was thinking about King Street and what we sometimes on a daily basis we work with people with anxiety that's so crippling, if you like, all consuming, that the energy it takes for that person to get through that day with social anxiety and paranoia, we as people working with that person for the day are exhausted by the end of the day, and the people in that position That's not all our artists, obviously, but we would have about 5-10% of our workshop, possibly more actually, who deal with social anxiety. Part of social anxiety is paranoia and depression. And if we are that exhausted by a day of it and they can't get away from
Yes.
it, imagine, it's very humbling for me to think how that struggle unfolds on a daily basis. And so when we're doing wraparound care or we're doing daily RFing that person, the sorts of things I try and do are remind them about the King Street family, which is pretty staunch, pretty much like tribal nations. It's very hard to leave the King Street family. You basically have to break the rules quite badly, and even then we'll say we'd like to negotiate for you to come back. So I talk about that, and I talk about that uniqueness. In fact, I chuck anything at it that I can, and just also what Seni was saying of a safe environment to speak, and that's harder than you think. And I remember my family member saying to me, I didn't want to worry you, which made me feel awful, but that's a selfish, she didn't want to take up space or worry me. And, so at King Street, if we could be the person who might hear that call, and we just chuck everything at it we can, the safe place to speak, to be totally yourself, like on a bad day yourself, and still have people speak to you, and so that's what I was thinking, and just grabbing hold of that hope. But honestly, I'm at a loss to. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm not at a loss. I have to chuck myself wholeheartedly into that solution, or those solutions. And what Seni was saying about the conversation, and Tony about the conversation, and allowing people to talk about it. Yeah.
Connections.
Yeah, connections. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, Seni, I was going to say to you that peer-to-peer support that we spoke about. So there's been some quite extensive research done, and what they've found in the studies is that by far the most effective form of suicide prevention is peer-to-peer support. So whether that is rangatahi to rangatahi, mother to mother, builder to builder, tennis player to tennis player, it's that peer-to-peer support that is more effective, because there's that commonality. So the initial connections that we make with people is easier to achieve, and because a lot of the time we're dealing with the crisis situation, by the time people speak up, it's important that those connections can be made quickly. If we were dealing with the more of the resilience type stuff earlier on, it's a little bit different. But in that situation, it's definitely. So it's so important. We know that our rangatahi is struggling with this, but we know that someone like you sitting down with someone else like you is more effective than an adult. And sometimes the thing that concerns me with the work that you do is that you're not given credit for how effective you are. I think a lot of times adults are quite happy to go, well, thank you, sweetheart, for your help, but I just really want to encourage you and any other young people, you seriously are the most effective form of suicide prevention with your peers, more so than any adult. Yeah, so be so acutely aware of the power that you hold, because you have something very special. Yeah, very special.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, actually, with that peer-to-peer support, we're working with the DHB and other health services around a new suicide prevention plan. And I think there's a girl from Wairarapa College and another girl from St Matt's, and then a group from Makoda as well. They've got a group of 12. We've all got a group of 12 in the DHB, and Anna from suicide prevention. They'll all come in and have these conversations with us, and not just speak with one, but speak with us all, the group of 12, to get, I think that's also super important, is like a fair representation of everyone, because it's fair to say, like, a voice coming from me, this year 13 student at Makoda College, but my experiences are way different to maybe a year 13 girl at Makoda, or even a year 13 boy. It's totally different. So I think it's so important to get these all voices heard and keep on having these conversations.
Yeah, definitely. That's good kōrero. Thank you for that advice, Tony. That really reinforces what we've encountered as well with our motorcycle club.
Absolutely.
We can do what we can to raise awareness and make some noise about it, but we are acutely aware we don't seem to be able to connect with the youth that we are concerned about, our children.
Yeah.
And we do recognise it is the young people that are most effective at engaging with your peer group, and because you all talk to each other, and you might communicate to each other things that you're not communicating with the parents or the adults, and even the support, the bigger organisations out there like the DHBs. You're not really engaging with them. The young people aren't engaging with them. There's a big disconnect there, and it's it is evident that and it's important that the youth connect with each other to talk about these things, and then take the challenge up themselves to take that next step to find a remedy for it amongst themselves. I think that there's got to be effective. We've just our community in the last week has been rocked by another event in our community that's just shattered the whānau, shattered the community, and questions are rocking around everyone's heads about what happened here. And I think that we talk about resilience, and I think that adults sometimes need to be careful about the words that they're saying to these young people, and that they are maybe not as resilient as perhaps they think that they are, and these wrong words, these heavy words, and that can be taken as almost threats, can put them in a bad frame of mind. So if the young person's peer group can pick up on that and intervene, they're probably more likely to be able to achieve that than someone like us at times, So thank you for your taking up that walk, that hikoi, that challenge that you issuing it to your peer group. It's massive. So whānau, I think we'll play some music now. Whakarongo mai. Welcome back, whānau, to Tribal Nations afternoon show. We're talking about mental health well-being. This is Mental Health Wellbeing Week, and we have some guests in our studio, some special guests, Tony Ryan and Seni from Makota College, and they've been talking about their experiences with the kaupapa, mental health wellbeing and teenage suicide. Tribal Nations will be running a ride against teenage suicide this Labour weekend, and it's to raise awareness against teenage suicide, and it's also to raise some funds for King Street Artworks. We will be riding out of Featherston on the 27th of October. Registrations will be starting at 9 a.m, and there'll be a barbecue there for everybody, free barbecue. If you register your bike, you'll get a ticket for some spot prizes up in Masterton, and we'll be heading through Martinborough, Greytown, Carterton, and we will end up at Farrier's Car Park in Masterton at 12:30, where there'll be some speeches, some mokai, and some kapahaka, and spot prizes for the riders. So if you're around Masterton at that time, about 12:30 on the 27th on Labour weekend, Sunday, no mai haere mai to the Farrier's Car Park, whānau, because we would like you to help us raise awareness against teenage suicide. The last event that Tribal Nations was involved with rolling through the Wairarapa was 2 years ago in 2017, and the statistics for the Wairarapa at that time were pretty bad. Wairarapa led the way, if you can say that we're at the high end of it, and it's heartening to see it with the latest statistics that went out. Wairarapa had dropped down quite a few notches with that, but like I said before, whānau, our community's been rocked with with it just recently. So to all the friends and whānau who have been suffering and who are going through the mamai of losing their loved one, we just send our sympathies and condolences and aroha out to everybody. So that's that's what the Tribal Nations is doing with the RATS run, and we are concerned about our community and the well-being of everybody as well. So come on down to the RATS run on Labour weekend, whānau. Help support King Street Artworks and help raise awareness against teenage suicide. So whānau, I'd like to again thank you for your contribution this afternoon. Have you got anything more to add to the kaupapa? Sister, you were saying something before about
I was just interested to talk to Seni about how it feels to be a young person at school, and we've got 10 kids between us, and I've five directly. I'm the mother of 10 kids. I may as well leave it at that. And sometimes I feel that when they're at school, they feel quite afraid and shut down to be themselves. I guess they'll be incredibly, they're like, oh mum, don't go to school looking like that, or drop me here. And I'm like, I'll do a tour around the car park, and that'll get them to do anything, and just that whole fear of the peer. Do you experience that, or?
Yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with kind of social media. I spoke at the women who make I can't remember the name of it. It's a bunch of women who kind of lead the community. It's a group. I spoke there, and that was one of the things I spoke about was kind of the influence social media has, and how much of an influence it has on our young people. And I think there's just kind of this, I don't even know what it is, but this hideous image that our young people feel like they have to be, and who they should be, and I think that is what it is. Is social media plays a huge influence in what our young people should look like and how they should act, and and the conversations go around school about how many followers and friends you have on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, and it's just so toxic and unhealthy, and how many likes you've got. So when you've got things like that floating around, and that's kind of like the social expectation as well, your friends are expecting that of you to look this certain way, because that's what's happening out in the the world of the internet. But yeah, that social media, I think, plays a huge influence, not only just on image as well, mental health hugely. Cyberbullying. Actually, Makota had a page put up, an Instagram page, we don't know who it was, but just saying these horrible things about students that went to Makota, and that happened at Waikol and at Chanel as well. These pages being put up to spread rumours and lies about these young people, and it's so damaging, the stuff that's getting put out. And one was actually made during the holidays as well. So if anything like that is happening, I encourage you to contact NetSafe and the police, because they're just so onto it, and we'll get those pages shut down.
So part of the way forward could be for young people to engage in the idea of difference, or the idea that those boundaries needn't be so tight. And because I get used to it being at King Street, difference is our thing. But I see it in my kids and other kids that it must be an extraordinary amount of weight on you to feel that if you step outside of that, the scorn is going to fall on you. And so I guess part of the way forward is and it needs to be your guys' conversation, as we were saying. We can just jump up and down about it, but
I think with a small community like the Wairarapa, I've definitely experienced it myself, like I don't know what it is, but there's an expectation of who you should be. And I work over in Wellington quite a bit for work, and going over there and just experiencing a whole different kind of world or community just opened up my eyes to just like there's just so much to life than what you should look like, because Wellington is just such a mixed bag. And even now I kind of walk around Marston and kind of a bit insecure about how I look, because of I don't know what it is, just the small community, hey. So
you get that small community sort of how they react to everyone. What I noticed about what's happening now, the students themselves, they've got their own little cliques, and they stick to it. Because they don't know, because it's just, they know what they're going to get if they open that up to other people. So you've got a group of, say, 3 or 4, and that's it, in that little cliquey group. And they won't sort of open themselves up for more students to come into it, because that might just break things up. And that's something that, we never had when I was younger. I mean, the whole school got out and we played bull rush. And we didn't have thousands of pieces of paperwork that we have to sign before we do bull rush, or climb trees and things like that. Nowadays, if you want to do bull rush, find the app, you might find it on the app, and that's what they'll do, is they'll go into their bedroom, they'll play it on there, because it's a game. So they stay in their little cliquey groups, and that's a safety mechanism for them. And I find that with our two kids at the moment at Makota, is they've got their little cliquey group, and they're happy to stay there for for the time they're there at their college. And I'm quite wrapped with that, because it means that they've got friends that can look after them, and they can look after their friends. And that's just how it is nowadays. There is a lot of bullies out there, and they've got some weird ways of showing showing it to other people, and so I understand those cliquey little groups. Is that how it is out there?
Yeah, I guess everyone does stay to their little groups because they're scared of opening themselves up to the rest, because you kind of are getting scrutinised of who you are and how you are. And like at our full school assembly when this broke out, the Facebook group, the Instagram pages and bullying online, me and another student leader spoke about it and kind of just encouraged everyone to stick up to these bullies because it can't carry on, and the school kind of just came together after that, and I guess those groups kind of disappeared for a bit. Everyone was just together as one, but then went back. So I think the groups sometimes they're great in ways to like have these conversations and support each other, but when they fall apart, it's just like, who else have you got to go to?
Absolutely.
That's right.
I've had that experience in year 10. I was in a group of 4, and as soon as that fell apart, I had no one else because I was just so
That's
close with this
exactly
group
right.
that I had no friends after that. It's kind of hard.
And if you already have an existing anxiety disorder, that when you lose that group of friends, you then end up staying at home, and that in actual fact feeds that, and then it becomes worse, makes it very, very difficult to step back out again. All the things that withdraw us in, and what started as a small problem becomes escalated very, very quickly. Very, very quickly.
So in terms of getting a message to youth, and we're kind of dinosaurs, would social media or would school solve it? It would be social media that would be the...
And that's what this kind of video documentary that I'm working on is, putting that out onto social media, because I feel that at this day and age that's the best way to connect with our youth, because they're just on there constantly all the time. So that's how I found the best way to connect. With the radio marathon, that was on Facebook, that was on YouTube, so it's just so easy for people to engage or even listen and watch. I think that is the best way to connect with them through social media, but it's not the best way. That like we're kind of in a day and age where the way we communicate is through our phones, and that is just not how it should work. We've got people on headsets on their games and talking through that, and as soon as they leave the door, they're just buried with anxiety because they just don't know how to have these face-to-face conversations. So in a way, it's great engaging with these young people on social media, but then we also need to be having these conversations.
So it might be suggesting the next step for someone vulnerable, because at least you could key in that conversation, get their attention, and then say, for goodness sake, play ball with someone, or physically move to talk to someone.
That physical move to get that. We talk about reaching out, so we tell people to reach out and ask for help. One of the problems that we find is that when that person is unwell, it is incredibly difficult, seriously, to pull the blankets out from over your head, let alone get out of bed, let alone get dressed, shower, and walk out the door. So when we ask people to reach out and ask for help, what we effectively need to do is make it so that they only have to reach a very short distance. So when somebody says, well, I'm not doing it, well, just message me on Facebook if you ever need to talk. If you bang on their door, they are going to be so much more receptive to having that personal connection than they're going to be if anybody can say, "Oh, poor you," on Facebook. But I sometimes think we expect the person. There was a thing that I read some time ago, and it said we as a society need to stop telling the minority to harden up, and instead the majority need to soften up. That's that whole, we're asking people to reach out, but really we need to be there so that they don't have to, and I think that seems to be the key. But with our rangatahi, it's been amazing. So I've been having hot chocolates and wedges for like years and years and years. And I worked with youth before Sam died as well, and I always say that I love teenagers way more than any grown-up I've ever met, and because they're incredibly honest. Their loyalty is profound compared to any adult that you'll find. Their level of loyalty towards one another is amazing. But what I found is, so that they so don't like that feeling of ickiness that unwellness brings. Some of them use the term broken, other than use a term that starts with F. But it sits so uncomfortably with teenagers, and adults, dare I say it sits more comfortably, that victim mentality. But our youth don't like it. So I found that as soon as you start to give them a few tools, that fill your toolbox up, mate, seriously, you might meet them 6 to 7 times, and then they're just, and that's it. So they don't need us to fix them. They need us to give them some tools, perhaps, that they haven't learnt yet, in order to fix themselves. And then they will go out and pass those tools on to their buddy, who will pass a bit like Amway, really, but in a good way. And so it's amazing how quickly they will begin to work on themselves. And it's amazing.
I think that's the key thing that I notice with mental health is some people think if you're the normal together person, you're giving some of your normal, loveliness to this broken person, and it's not like that at all. And if you're going to try and have that conversation, it's just not going to work.
That's right.
Because what you need to do is give of yourself, soften, find those places where we're all a mental health project, and you speak from that part, and then you're leaving your mana, their mana intact, and you can more easily have that conversation. And at King Street, it's if you come in with a high and mighty, I'm going to fix you, because clearly I'm not broken. You've just stopped the conversation straight away. Whereas if you're able to show that to be strong is to be vulnerable, to be together is to have been through SHIT in the past. If you can show that, then and it's a two-way situation. I've learnt so much working at King Street. I'm so humbled by the experiences, and I see people who are so extraordinarily strong because of the things that they're dealing with. And it's that way round. It's not it's not imparting strength. It's, as you say, have you tried this? And then they're away laughing.
Absolutely. They don't need us to fix them. They may need us to hand over some tools, because we talk about wisdom, and how do you get it? No good way. Wisdom is by experience, and usually not a good one. And I always used to think, don't want any more, have plenty.
I think the other thing too is the time frame. There is no time frame, so it might be something that the person can pick up really quickly, but in our experience at King Street, sometimes it's being there for a very long time.
Commitment.
10 years, 7 years, 3 years, and you're still saying, I see you, and you're okay. And waiting for that, because the shelf life of a crisis, a mental health crisis, is there's no time frame. It's like grief, and accepting them, that's okay.
And I think that's why our community organisations like tribal nations, like King Street, like peer support groups and stuff within our colleges, are so important, because an agency can meet you once a week between 4 and 5. Our community has the ability to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as long as it takes. So that's why our community has a tremendous amount
to give.
To give.
When it comes, we went to a meet at Wainuia Mata, and remember that, Brother Clint? and they had mentors there. They put these youth mentors in place, and these youth mentors were put into the colleges over there, so any one of the other youth that went to that school can actually go there and talk to these ones. They were trained up on that. Do you think that'll work, Cindy, around here?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I was on the Makota Board of Trustees as the student rep, and that's a conversation we've had around the table, is having mentors and having peer support, like the student leaders being the mentors for the rest of the young people around the school. Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic, but also not only support for those, the rest of the group, but support for those mentors as well. Because like we were saying before, there's such a huge responsibility even just having these conversations.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that's something we need to start seriously looking at, is having mentors and sharing knowledge and supporting each other.
That's one of the things. We're a great believer in everything I do. If you don't need to reinvent the wheel, don't. I think even within this, we see a lot of peacocks, those people that have that look at me thing. But there are so many good people that have done so many good things, who are more than happy to share that sort of thing to help you get set up in the first place. And as responsible adults, let's say it's our job to support these guys to support each other, and give them the resources that they need, and then just support them to support their peers, because you guys have got this. Trust me, you got this.
Some powerful messages out there, whānau. I like the message of empowering each other's mana, and the majority need to soften up. I think that's they're things that everybody could do well to take those things on board, and talk nicely to each other, be good to each other, be positive. Sometimes bullies are there's a bit of a red flag there. There's some mamai going on with them while they're wanting to pick on other people. And I also like the kōrero about issuing the challenge to your peer group, to others, to change your behaviour, to speak out, to look out for each other. So whānau, we're really knocking on the end of our program here. We're thank you for your kōrero, been awesome kōrero this afternoon. So can I just, on behalf of Tribal Nations Radio, say thank you to Brother Sini for your contribution and coming in today, brother. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again in the future with your kōrero and all your good work. So keep it up, brother. That's massive. Stay hearty. And Sister Tony, thank you for your words of wisdom, your words of encouragement, and as a parent, you've got an experience that we haven't got, and we appreciate your contribution today. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your story with us.
You're so incredibly welcome.
Thank you. So on behalf of Tribal Nations Radio, whānau, we'll might leave it here, and tune in next week for another kōrero about what Tribal Nations is up to, and what we're doing in the week leading up to our Rats Run. So tune in next week, whānau, and we'll see you then, and you'll hear from us then. So kia kite anō.